Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. In this season, I'm going to be speaking to academy managers from the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and some Scottish clubs. As an academy parent myself, I want to bring some insight into how these academies are being run. I find that it's easy to approach coaches. I hear from players, ex-players, and parents on many platforms about their experiences in academies. But I do not hear from academy managers. This is why I want to do this season. If you think first team managers have playing staff of 18 to 25, whereas academy managers have a playing staff of over 100. That could be from the under 9s to the under 18s. These are people who are so powerful, but they just seem like these men in grey suits or women in grey suits that you just never get to hear from. So what I want to do is I want to bring to you, the listener, what they think, what they want to sign, and what they are looking for in these academies. So if you like this episode, don't just watch and keep it to yourself. Subscribe to see more and spread the word. Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. On today's episode, I have the Walsall Academy manager, Mr. Martyn Bowles. Thank you for joining me today, Martyn.
Thanks, Marvy. Pleasure to be here.
I appreciate you joining me. How I normally start with everybody, I normally ask, have you ever played for a professional football academy or school of excellence?
No, I've never played for a professional football club. I'll be open to say I've not kicked a football. I didn't do it in school. I'm from a rugby background, so I played to a level in rugby, in professional academies, so that's where my experience comes from.
So how did you end up in football from rugby? That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So I've had a few shoulder injuries and surgeries, so I knew my time was limited in rugby. So that happened at about 17 years old and went through all that stage and then went on to do my degrees. So I did a sports coaching and performance degree in Wales, where I was at the time through rugby. And I met a lecturer there who was heavily in football in the area. And obviously being on a coaching degree, coaching's coaching, it is transferable skills. And he just said, look, do you want to try football? And I've admitted it, that I didn't play football growing up. So I was a novice and I just said, yeah, why not? It's something new. And just loved and fell in love with it ever since. And to this day, been in football since that day.
Since you were 17?
Since I was 19. So when first year of my degree, I went in that September. So 1920 onwards, I've been in football. So that's about 10 years now.
Brilliant. So how did it start? What was the first coaching role did you do? How did this all take off?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was at the university was at a college program, so I took the girls 7-a-side team to start off with, just to get my teeth into it, see what the coaching was, and I have my own opinions on that. Girls are a little bit easier to coach than boys at times, so it was a good introduction. And then from that, I think I'd showed that coaching practice was transferable. Got an opportunity to go and do the boys academy team at that college. Once I did that for a couple of years, then naturally I went into the Welsh system of academies in the Premier League, the Welsh Premier League. So that's like Carmarthen Town. Then I went to Llanelli Town later on in semi-pro football, essentially. Then I got involved in the Welsh schools under 18s international team, going out to Italy, playing coaching in Centenary Shield, playing against England schoolboys, Ireland, Scotland, and so on. And then I think around 3 years ago, I wanted to get back into a pro environment. I've done lecturing on the side of this coaching gig, and I kind of wanted to get back into being around that environment that I was as a rugby player, and the opportunity at Walsall came up.
Yeah. So at Walsall, what was the position you first took, or what position? What was the role?
Yeah, I came in as head of coaching in June 24, which I'm indebted to Rob Williams, the previous academy manager, who saw the role in a similar way that I did, coming from a lecturing background about education and development and helping in coach and player development and getting the process and systems in place. So I was fortunate that I think he saw that slant rather than going from an ex-professional into a coaching gig. I wouldn't have had that pathway. So yeah, I came in that role.
So how long have you been the academy manager of Walsall?
I believe this is my 13th week, but I could be wrong, but it's very new.
And yeah, I did ask you off air, but just share with the people, how are you finding the role?
Yeah, again, it's a good question, isn't it? The role is amazing in terms of the autonomy, being a leader of multidisciplinary teams, not just coaching anymore, which I was used to. I love that. That's at my core, is person and human development. I always said it was human development before coach development was my tagline in the previous role. So that's continued. But obviously with the nature of looking after one department versus we've got 15 disciplinaries here. So going from 1 to 15 comes with challenges in the sense of the best skills you have to have are, in my opinion, 13 weeks in, is patience and multitasking. And if you can do that and master that, then I think you're on the right path. And then just staying true to you. So although you plan to come in and do 5 things, by the end of the day, you've done 20. But I think it's being open to that. And I do love the variety. But at the same time, you just know that's where your time goes. So they would be the challenges. But the best thing about it is I still get to develop people, and it's just in a more varied way is probably the outlook I have on it.
When you say 15, what are those things, or could you name some of them just so?
Yeah, you're testing me to get them all. So what I mean by those is I go through all the phases. So you got pre-academy, FP, YDP, professional development phase. You got the analyst department. You got psychology department. You got recruitment, strength and conditioning. You got medical. You got education, secretary, player care, safeguarding. I got coach analyst, not just analysts on a match day, and then managing up. So CEO is my line manager. So I've counted 15. If I missed someone off, I'm sorry.
So you have to speak to the CEO as well. Do you inform the first team manager of what's going on with the academy as well?
Yeah.
How many
So that,
plates are you juggling, mate?
yeah. No, it's a good point you make, and I missed that one out. So, yeah, managing up the CEO. So we meet weekly, which is great from him. He set that up. So we're really clear in communication. Anything I need second opinion on that I don't feel I can get it from in the academy, it'll be him. Ben's really open. He's excellent. And then, yeah, with the first team manager. So it's exactly the same. So just getting second opinions, talking about players who are closer to him, obviously in a PDP phase, if there's any in the 16s, for example, always looking ahead. I think that's a good thing. We're not always in the here and now. He does have eyes on what's going on. So it's not a shock as sense, because I don't think it should be. I think there should be a storyboard for these players and they get that exposure. So he's really good at that. I try and get up to the training ground once a week. And the reason why I say that is we're based at the stadium, the whole academy, but the 18s are with the first team up in the training ground, which is about 20 minutes away. So I'll try and get up there, whether you walk around the pitch with him, just sit in his office, have a cup of coffee, get his eyes on the 18s training or something like that. So yeah, they're the two I would normally manage upwards. And then, yeah, the rest of the disciplinary team for the rest that I'll manage below.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
So when you say you're based at the stadium, do the kids play at the stadium as well, or you mean just staffing wise, you're based at the stadium?
Yeah, so it's our unique selling point, which I love. So the 3G that's behind the stadium, if anyone's ever been there, you can see it on Google Maps. That is, our whole academy comes out of that. So training in the nights, in the winter, the 18s will come there. The 18s gym is here. The schoolboys gym is here. Education day release for 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s is based here at the stadium. Any analysis we do is based at the stadium. The 18s training is just at the training ground. So the majority, 95%, comes out of here. And then our match days, we actually play at a school venue in Darlaston because they got the 4 pitches next door. So we will use those. And then we do have access as well and use a goals facility as well. So like the cage games for the foundation phase. And then our 16s and 18s play at the County FA ground, which is something a little bit special with a stand, a really good quality pitch, floodlights, etc. So yeah, although majority of the working week comes out of the stadium, on weekends we tend to have a little circle of where what we'll use.
What category is the academy, and how do you become that category for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so we are what you call a Category 3 academy. So there are 4 categories. So we are a Category 3, so we have a full licensed academy. So what we mean by that is you've got your pre-academy all the way up to 18s. We have to have the relevant full-time members of staff across all the disciplines. That's linked to audit requirements through the EPPP framework. So for example, full-time head of education, recruitment, secretary, the phase leads, head of coaching, academy manager, and so on. And through that, I believe there's 92 at the moment in England, but they'll be spread across from 1 to 2 to 3 and 4. And that comes with the governance through the EFL, PJAC, through audit. So you have to hit certain criterias. So for instance, for a coaching one, because I can say that one confidently right now, is like you have to have ratios of 1 to 10, for example, of coach to athlete relationships. So that's good because it keeps it quite small, a lot more contact. And then you have to have certain amount of hours that they're training and competing at. So there's great governance around it. There's a lot that goes into a framework of a Category 3. The only thing, honestly, that just sets us aside from a 2 and a 1 is just infrastructure. To be honest, it is resource, but we are in an area full of Cat 1s. So we're very unique. We're the 5th biggest club in the area. We're not the smallest. We're the 5th biggest. We do have a unique selling point around what we have. So we embrace that.
In Cap 3, because I think a lot of people don't realize the difference apart from the whole dome situation. Cat 2 has a under 21s. Cat 3 stops at under 18s. How do you find that scenario? Would you prefer to have a 21 program to give boys more of a chance at becoming pro at the club?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be an academy manager who would honestly sit here and say they wouldn't want a 21s. So I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, I think your club model and infrastructure has to fit it to get actually the benefit out of it. So for me personally, Walsall doesn't need a 21s for our pathway because our boys aren't far away from getting out there. And the reason I'm pointing that way is because in this room, the stadium's, the pitch is just there. Like, they're not that far away. So Category 3s can have 21s. It's just on a infrastructure basis. So we choose not to because we believe our pathway is right how it is right now. In the same breath, I'd say that, of course, there are developments that go on about third-year scholarships and under 21s in the future. Of course, we'd love to have one, but it has to be right. It has to be right facilities-wise, infrastructure-wise, extra coaching and so on. So right now, I wouldn't say Walsall needs it, in my opinion. But of course, I think any academy manager would agree that it would be a bonus if you could.
You mentioned auditing. If you didn't have the audits in place, like the rules or restrictions or the guidelines that they have in place, what would you implement? Or is there anything you would implement in the academy right now that the guidelines restrict you from?
Yeah, that's a good question because in terms of the guidelines, in terms of coach contact, what they have to do outside of football, so like S&C, nutrition, those kind of provisions, I think are really good because I'm not sure where you get that access of clubs that aren't professional. other than you're paying for it as extra, whereas here you get part of a program. So I believe that's a really good strong point of it. My question is flexibility versus being structured. So I have an argument around we have a very structured program because of audits around what you need to get out. Now, I say that's a plus point as well, but I think it's up to clubs that they need to find what fits best to their players and give them a really true experience of your area. What's your area need first and foremost? Because it has to smell, it has to have your aftershave on it. But then secondly, what do the players then need individually, bespokely? For some like first team, they'll have a game, suddenly they get 2 days off because the manager decides 2 days off. Well, we don't do that because the players know they're having their Monday, Wednesday, Friday and a game on a Sunday, right? But how can we prepare them to have that like flexibility suddenly and ad hoc? Now I get it. There's stakeholders involved, there's parents taking them, there's routines around there. So it's a little bit harder. I do get that point. But at the same time, what are we doing to be proactive to create experiences that kind of get something of that, get a flavor of it? Because these players need to understand those tools. So I would say something around a club ethos, although we have philosophy of play and stuff like that we have to put toward it. I get all of that. But all I'm saying is our program, I'd love there to be, can you demonstrate where you prepped them to be flexible for a first team environment? I'd love to have that.
Very, very interesting. I've not heard someone say that before, so it's a very, very interesting point. So how far ahead do you future proof your plans or your vision for the academy? Is it a year? Is it a few months? Do you do it a few years ahead? How does it work for you?
Yeah, I can say it now because I had to present it, right, to get the role. So I presented to 2033. So 2033 is in a 7 to 8 year cycle. The reason why I did that is our current under nines will get to a scholarship by then. So I projected where that is because I have to know what that looks like to then know how I come backwards. And as this visual, I can't give you the visual now, obviously, but in 2033, I put up what that bar was. And then I came down like steps like that. And basically, it showed to the staff that yes, we want to get there, but right now we're focusing on this bit down here and you know what's coming next. So there's stuff like, I'll go from now upwards. So you've got like world-class basics. What can you control? What can we control that we currently have now? So just be world-class at that and don't worry about the next bit. The next bit then is innovation. So this is a passion of mine, is thinking outside the box and trying to increase the percentage of players that make it, because it's well documented that it's not very high. So we're just trying to be innovative in that. So trying things, be really open with dialogue, but we got to try. The next bit then is alignment process. So that's always in the middle because I think alignment depends on multiple people. So you have to build relationships to get that. So it could move right down to now. Whereas I always put it in the middle because it might take a little bit longer and it might happen sooner. But that's alignment in process and it's termed as the Future Academy. And then the next area is international and international recognition. So being known for something, and you can definitely probably think, and people listening will know of some clubs, and you can say, yeah, they do that. So we need to get to that, but you can't get there until you've done it and found it out. And then the last bit is investment in evaluation. So what I mean by that is asking for extra resource at that point, maybe, or you evaluate your aftershave. Have you got it right? Does it smell of Walsall in the area? Because if it doesn't, then arguably you're going, what's unique about you? So we need to evaluate that. And then after that happens, we kind of come full circle again, and we might be in 2033, or we might have got there within 3 years. We don't know. But that's the projection. So I have gone 7 to 8 years because that's my belief. And I hope it gives real clarity to the staff and the parents I presented this to in January as well. And it should give them clarity of where we're going on each stage.
That in itself is a job in itself to visualize that far ahead.
Yeah, you're right.
How do you even do that?
Get in a room that is quite dark, and just being in your own thoughts. No, um,
Brilliant.
I'll be honest. How do you future plan for that? I think it's knowing all the facts where it is now. Like I had a unique opportunity. I came in having already been in the club. I already understood what it was. I wasn't coming into it new. I'd seen what had been done really well in previous with Rob, and I just knew the fresh set of eyes that it needed. And that's probably the bit is I'd had that underground. I knew the facts of the football landscape because from my lecturing background, I'm quite studious. So I do a lot of that. So I'd done like good practice. We've gone on study visits. I've been tried to engage in relationships and see what other people are doing. And then you kind of go, right then, so what's Walsall need? And once you come back to that, it gets quite clear. So although it's a lot of belly work, I think when you get to the actual point, you think, right, what smells of us? What's our aftershave and what do we need? And then I think you can come out with it quite methodically.
So, with all that happening, I'm sure somewhere in there, the CEO is saying, how many boys do you have a target of how many boys you should be bringing through to first team, like within that process of time? Are there numbers that you don't have to obviously reveal those numbers, but I'm saying, are there numbers that are given to you to say you need to be having one or two a year or three a year to make the first team?
Yeah. So we've got KPIs, performance KPIs aligned to that. So we do have that, and that's been through, that was in my previous role, so that was myself, head of coaching, academy manager, first team manager, CEO, and the head of football for the ownership group. So there's 5 people involved in that. So you definitely get an angle from all angles. So I think that's really good. And I think the biggest strength I can honestly say is because we're not got the amount of people in chain of command, we're very accessible at Walsall. So the collaboration is actually quite easy. But the biggest credit I can give is everyone's really open-minded, and that's made it a lot easier. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on a podcast, it's the actual truth, is the collaboration is a little bit easier. So with our KPIs, we can be honest and say, look, let's make them tangible. How can we actually achieve them? We'll get this KPI for this year, but in 3 years, we want to achieve that. So we've got those. And for this season, we've done really well. We've still got a couple of more months, right? But so far, we have achieved majority of our KPIs this season. So that just shows that they're tangible. But at the same time, there is a pathway because ultimately some of the KPIs are performance related for player appearances and so on. That's an insight into what maybe some of the KPIs are. But yeah, that would be the process. And I imagine a lot of clubs that you'd like to hope would have the same. Yeah.
So for little Johnny who might be listening to this going, Dad, what's a KPI? Can you explain what that indicator is? Look, I know what it is, but I mean, just for any ordinary person listening who don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So it stands for a key performance indicator. So basically, I have them of all the leads of a multidisciplinary team. So they all have to set out their own performance strategic KPIs. And what a KPI means, other than what it is in long, is if you were going to be achieving and maximizing what you have, what do you need? And what are those goals? So essentially it's goal setting, but with a performance indicator. And we always try and say to strive to try and be really good in that department and move it on again. So rather than just do the bare minimum and just like say, let's progress that amount through, no, let's try and strive. Because ultimately, if you don't achieve for number 1 and you just achieve for 3, you're probably going to come 5th. But if you achieve for number 1, you might surprise yourself and become number 1, but you might just come 2nd, and that's fine. You can evaluate that. So that's why we do key performance indicators, is trying to set goals.
You've also mentioned the word pathway. Can you explain what a pathway is, please, for the average person?
Yeah. A pathway is like a path that you walk up to your house on, right? So we give a visual anecdote to it. So if your pathway is made out of bark, in the winter it gets pretty soggy, right? and you chip the bark away and it looks a little bit worn. You can have a pathway that's got chip-ins, stone chip-ins, a little bit more robust, but can be loose at times if you kick it away or you go off from the car quickly and you leave a little hole. Or you can have a pathway that's made out of tarmac, right? A little bit more robust, harder to move, but you probably know where you're going with it. So I use that as an analogy. Why? Because that's what your pathway should look like. It should be something that's pretty tarmacked, if I'm honest. And by the way, I know tarmac takes a lot to move, like you got to get at it, but it should be something that is clear of a direction and it's quite sturdy. So with us, we're going through a review at the moment, right? Is our player development pathway. How can we make it more bespoke? So every single player has a different pathway, right? You can't treat every single player the same. And that's incredibly hard because of the ratios of staff to coaches, players to coaches. It's incredibly hard, right? But you can do groundwork to try and get close. And I think that's where you have to understand the connection. So connection's massive for us. Is knowing your players, knowing their key stakeholders, finding out information, knowing what their home life is like, knowing what they're like at school, finding all that information out, and then start talking about football, about how they do. And then suddenly you might be able to predict what their pathway could be like. Or if you can't predict it, because it's bloody hard, you have to try and put things in place for them to achieve, to have little challenges along the way that you know they need. And if you can do that, then to me, you're pretty close to a tarmac pathway. So yeah, that's what I would explain
The
a pathway.
pathway lead to the first team.
Yeah, so that's number one. That's number one
Okay.
on our mission, is develop players for the first team. So, and that should be the indicator for every single club. Is number one is to get them in the first team. And look, that's my opinion. I wouldn't openly argue that would what every club needs to have.
Where are you when it comes to Q1 to Q4 signings, Q1 to Q4 birth signings? How are you guys like at Walsall with that?
Good question. It's currently something that's on our radar at the moment because I've looked at the recruitment model around player profiles, football abilities, physical profiles. I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't look at the quartiles. Why? Because ultimately we do have quite a rigorous testing data analysis at the moment in comparison to our profiles. So you can't go to me and say that an FP player is going to be a striker when he's older. You can't tell me that, but he definitely has attributes that could fit certain positions, but we need to wait until he gets later in the program in the YD phase. So I don't acknowledge quartiles, although I'm aware of it, and it's on all their depth charts, by the way. It's all on there. I wouldn't use it in a yes or no decision of signing a player, but because we back it on data versus what they do on a football pitch, should we bring those together?
What is youth development to you?
Youth development is what it says on the tin. It's youth players, under 18 players. If you had a 21s, it would include those as well, just to be clear. And it's development. Development's meant to be bumpy. It's not meant to be smooth. And if it is smooth, then I'd argue that they're not getting challenged enough. So whether you've got someone who's excelling, and parents, players who are listening to this, you can definitely think about players who have just transitioned through and had an easy ride. They need to have had challenges as well. Versus you got, like on the previous question, you got Q3s or 4s and they're physically always challenged. They all need to have their own bespoke one. So youth development to me is looking after players at the heart, having care, having a connection, understanding who they are, and developing a pathway and a development program that's going to bring the best out of them and give them the best chance.
So results or development, what side of the fence are you on?
I'm on both. Is there a fence that sits both? Because you can't tell me that a 9-year-old doesn't want to beat me in a race on the playground. So you can't suddenly tell him it's not about winning today, but you have to do it in the right way. So development is making sure you've got a bespoke player development, obviously, around what they need, but then set them challenges for them to achieve. Well, that's winning, because one of them might be about dominating your 1v1 duels. That's all about winning. But you have to always talk about the result, especially when you're in the FP phase. And do you have to foundation phase. So do you have to always be going in straight away as a coach and getting on a tactic board and saying, we have to win today? I would say no, that's not it. But I would say that they have to collaborate, because ultimately my belief is you're developing players for the first team. Well, the first team play for 3 points every Saturday. So you can't tell me that they're not about winning. And like the analogy I said, regardless what age they are, they want to beat you in a race. So don't try and take it away. You just have to be clever about who's motivated by what and set them a challenge to bring that out.
You know what I find interesting as well with academy football compared to grassroots is that you've said it indirectly multiple times about individualism, right? So at grassroots football, everyone's more focused on the team has to win, the team this, it's more team focused. And the difference when you come into academy football is, yes, there's a team on the pitch, but it's more individual, like learning plans. Everyone's on their own different individual learning plans. I find that very, very interesting because it's a team sport, but it's not, because they're all being judged individually. Whereas for a grassroots team, they're all being judged as a unit.
Yeah. So I got a counter to it, is in grassroots football, you have an individual that dominates and the team love him. So that, I'd argue there's a lot more individualized or individualism in that. I'm going to speak from my experience in rugby. Is I had an individual learning plan which had gym stuff on it a lot because of the nature of the sport, had skills elements, what I had to do in relation to my position as a back three player. So catching high balls, stuff like that. I had to go and do that individuals because I know that if I didn't do that, I'd make a knock on and my forwards have to go and do a scrum then. So there's always a counter and a relation to the team. So I'd say what's really good about the individual learning plans is when they're done right, they should make that player better. But at the same time, this is where I think we have a disconnect is, say you say to your centre midfielder, he needs to make more forward passes into the half space. Let's say that, right? Stop going sideways or backwards. Be more brave. And then you said to me, a striker needs to get better at running in behind. So pair those two up together. That's what we miss. Is if you pair those two up together in training, then go to match day and say, you know, if you complete 10 of those connections and you both get out, I'll get you a reward. What are you motivated by? So if you had something like that, suddenly you get those little tandem going. And if you had them all over the pitch, then suddenly there's a bit of a team aspect to those ILPs. So that's what I think is, if we can get that connect a little bit better, then I believe that they're a good thing to have.
No, yeah. And like you just said, those ILPs, like you don't hear about ILPs in grassroots. You don't.
No, you
It's just team focused. It's just all about team. It's not. I've had people saying, "What's an ILP?" It's like obviously an individual learning plan, but when a lot of grassroots players come to academy football, they're like, "Oh, it's very individualized."
Yeah.
What is your take on sleep and nutrition? How important is it to performance?
You're talking to someone who believes a lot in off the field stuff. So how long have you got? I think it's something that player mapping is really important. So what I mean by player mapping is that you have like the FA four corner model, the tech, tac, social, psych and physical stuff for each player. But you also have their nutrition, you have their individualized S&C plan, analysis is in that. But then you have their nutrition, you have their sleep, you have their home life, you have their school life, you have these reports. So they all make a player mapping. So you can imagine if they're on the bottom, you've got a graph of how they're doing at the moment. So it creates that visual. So for me, for sleep, we are people that need sleep, right? And sleep is when recovery happens. But if you think about sleep too much and you track sleep too much, you don't end up sleeping. So the idea is that you should go through the day, right? Not think about it and know that you're going to sleep because we're humans, we have to. And then when you get tired in the night, go to bed and then sleep. And then all you have to do is start training yourselves to set yourself an alarm at a certain point, make sure you have breakfast straight away so it starts to wake your body up. and then your body starts to train like that. And I think for us is you hear about players who go and play PlayStation till 12 o'clock at night, 1 a.m. in the morning, but that's not training themselves. And that's why I say that bit's the educational bit. Nutrition is the biggest thing. Nutrition is the biggest thing to go alongside physical development, because you can't do physical development with the right nutrition. So that's so important. So to give you an insight to category 3, we feed our scholars, so they'll have lunch. We don't feed all the others. Whereas that's the difference you'll find probably in the Cat 1s and 2s is when they have the hybrid programs, the day release, when they come in the day from school, they'll get fed. Well, we don't. So that's something that is a big work on for us, because we can only educate. We can't go to everyone's house and do it. But my personal opinion is it's the biggest thing that can influence a player's physical development. So it's so important that you educate in the right way. But even illness, like when they're ill, what nutrition to have. When they're injured, how often do you see a player put on an extra 2 to 5 kilos when they're injured? Well, of course they're going to, because they eat sweets and chocolate and rubbish. But you've got to educate them that it's even more important when you're injured to have X, Y, and Z, and give them that plan. So we've got that. So we've got a specific nutrition based on their weights, and then when they're injured and when they're ill, what to have and things like that.
What age do you start that from?
The guidance is from under 9s onwards.
That's brilliant.
Because at that age, it's the stakeholders, their parents, isn't it? The guardians.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and educate, like, respectfully, because you don't understand everyone's resource at home.
Yeah.
But respectfully, you can just give guidance and say, look, can it be this that they're having straight after the game on the way home, rather than on the M5 services, they're getting a KFC? Can they have this instead? So it's just choices. And I think once you start doing that, it just snowballs and educates. So when they get up to the top end where they might come into our scholarships, they understand that's what I got to eat and do it themselves. So then the parents aren't doing it. And I think that's the development of the human, not just the player or the coach in my previous role.
So you got goalkeepers. I want to just touch on goalkeepers. I don't talk about these guys. They're special breeds. Their position is very rare, and at least you can have a right back who can be a right winger or right wing back, but a goalkeeper, you're just a goalkeeper, right? What do you look for in your keepers, like Walsall? What do you think, if you was to give a goalkeeper any advice, what would it be?
Yeah. Good question. Them to have a resilient mindset first and foremost, because obviously the position they're in, they're often on their own. We try and get them to be grouped with their back 3 or back 4, wherever we're playing, to understand that there's a little bit of teamwork in that, so not on their own. They have to be good movers, but you have to understand, if you get recruitment right in goalkeeping, because of physical development, growth, maturation, it might be later on they become a good mover. So you have to persevere at times, as long as you got the recruitment right. And then the third thing would be open-minded. So we are now, this is new, and I know a lot of academies do it already, is trying to play the goalkeepers out for a quarter at foundation phase, just because we all want them to be able to play with their feet, but they only practice getting balls smashed at them in training. So we need to go and give them the exposure of being a centre midfielder, being in tight areas under pressure. So then when a striker comes and presses them on match day, they can deal with that little body fade they need to do now. Well, where does a goalkeeper ever learn how to do a body fade? So it's things like that, isn't it? I think you have to build that within your program. So I think the open-mindedness will be the third thing. Parents and the stakeholders understand that, yes, they are coming in as a goalie, totally get that, but this is how we've got to develop certain areas of their game, and we're going to have to play them as a centre midfielder for a block, for example.
Wow. That's interesting. That's an interesting. So who goes in goal?
You normally have 2 at each age group. So they'll have a half each, and then one of the quarters in the other half, they'll go outfield.
In match time, or not just training, in match?
Yeah, so that's what we're looking to do going forward, is in matches that they're out there. And this goes back to your argument of like winning versus development. Well, development arguably is the biggest one in that one, isn't it? You know they're not going to be the best mover, but they're the things you can control. They're the facts, so don't worry about them. and the opinions that come with them, as long as you are open about what you're trying to do and given a mission, the opinions don't really matter. Because that's what I'd say is people say football's a game of opinions. It's not. Football is a game of facts. You score in one goal and you defend the other. However, it's surrounded by opinions. That's what that's what the saying is.
Okay. He's on the board today. He's had his Weetabix.
I had 6 every morning. I had 6 Weetabix.
He's had his Weetabix. Do you guys do academy tours at Walsall? And
Yep.
what do you think the benefits of academy tours are?
Yeah, it's the greatest thing as experiences, isn't it? And how can you recreate a different culture, a European culture at Walsall? Like, it's virtually impossible, right? But this goes back to us, Walsall. So our borough at Walsall is 61% South Asian. So you can't tell me I'm going to go and create an English environment at Walsall. I have to go and create experiences, and we have a governance to create those. So we go on tours. So FP went to Scotland last year. They went to Newcastle this year because we tend to keep them within the UK for obvious reasons. Then we try and go abroad. So we try to go to Poland, but that one's just on costing. So we're going to go to Wales instead and have that part just because it's short notice since I've been involved. Where did they go? They went abroad last year somewhere. I want to say somewhere like Amsterdam, something like that, Holland or something. They went abroad in that one. So, but we'll take 3 age groups at a time. So I think we took the 12s, 13s, 14s, something like that. So we do believe in that, yeah. Because of experience, they need to sample other experiences. And just remember, sometimes you find out a kid hasn't got a passport, he's never been abroad, and we might be his first time. Aren't we accountable to that? I think we are. So you definitely know then that like you can have a profound effect on someone. And that's third on our mission. So on our mission, our third one is develop an elite environment for players for society. So if we can encourage that, then I think we've done okay.
So you always hear about like at academies, like left footers are favoured and right footers, he smiles. What's your take on the whole left foot, right foot situation?
Shouldn't everyone be ambidextrous? So that my argument is I always got taught to be able to kick off your foot in rugby, off both feet as well as you could. Now, obviously, you know that you might be 10% less on your weaker foot, but you can definitely get to a point. So that's my argument, is that's why at foundation phase, you have to have core skills around developing both feet, because they're going to be in tight areas. And even if they get to under 18s and they can just make a 10-meter pass with their weaker foot, I think you've done your duty in that. Whereas you'd like to hope that you can develop players that can maybe clip one with both feet. So I think that's something. So I understand the fad. I get it. I'm not going to lie to you that we sometimes have to look at left-sided players. I think that's the nature of the game. But I think it's come from because at that, how predominantly people are born right-footed. Like that's a statistic that you can't get away from. That's like biological stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that you try and get your program to bring out that they're both feet. Like we've just signed a centre half now who's as good at scholarship age, who's as good as his left foot as his right foot, but he's a right footer. Right. So like that's unbelievable recruitment to get it at that age, right? But he's come out of a Cat 1 program. So he's going to develop probably those. So what I'm trying to say is in foundation phase, you definitely develop them. So then you probably get away from the fad keep happening. So I think it's just a little bit of work down here at the moment.
A player goes out on loan and they are really good. Everyone's happy about them when they go out on loan. You can see the potential, and they come back and they're not the same player. Have you seen that? And what do you think that's down to?
Yeah. So we have a big emphasis on loans in our 18s because of that's the top age we have before they go into first team. So we need to try and give them experience of that. So I'll come back and say, if you're proactive in your loans and they're calculated, you should tend to not get that kind of reaction. However, sometimes you need to orchestrate an environment and a loan that might bring out that kind of experience, but you need to voice it to that player. You need to make sure they're aware they're going as a second choice. They might not get much game time, but you're going for a month, and this is why. And then you need to say about, right, you played all your career from YDP to PDP, you've been first choice. You need to have an experience of not being first choice, and we'll reflect on it. Now, when you're clear about that and you're proactive, then it's used in a positive experience. Now, I've definitely seen experiences not at Walsall, but before as well, and I'm sure a lot of people will, where it's just been, yeah, he needs game time, get him out there. All right, do you know how he plays? What pitch do they play on? What formation do they play on? How do they defend? How do they attack? What's their transition look like? What's the manager like? And what's the club ethos and environment like? Because if it's not right, ultimately, are they going to have the best experience? Now, I know there'll be some advocates listening going, yeah, we'll just chuck them out because they need to get that. They need to be learning and adapt themselves. I agree, right, to a certain extent, but I still think you need to be proactive to stop that little short gap happening.
Thank you for letting me know that. I'm a trialist. I've come in. I'm going to be a Walsall player. I want to be a Walsall player. 3 of us have come in. You've picked 2 straight away. They've caught your eye. 8-week trial. Those 2 have like made it. I've not. We've all come from grassroots. What did they have over me that you favoured, that you have seen grassroots players don't quite have when you don't choose them, like to register at your club?
Yeah. So obviously the nature of our category, we get a lot of grassroots players come through, probably more so than Cat 1s or 2s. What do we look for? They have to fit one of our football abilities. So they have to be either a protector, regainer, creator, or a finisher. So if they don't fit into one of those, then ultimately they're not going to be a Walsall player. So that would be a first and foremost. So they need to have attributes. So like a regainer needs to be tenacious, a ball winner, really good in 1v1s, can read the game well, probably quite a good mover as well. So if they have those attributes, they can fit a profile, and then we look at what's in the squad currently. But obviously we have very targeted recruitment, so we already know what we need to have. We carry small squads at Walsall, so we only have 10 in FP. 11 and then 12 at under 12s. So we have small squads because we believe in high contact. So I wouldn't say we have a high turnover, if I'm honest. But the biggest thing is matching their attributes to a football ability. Like that's the thing that we're looking for. And if they need to have a physical profile as well. Now, what a physical profile means, right, is not all 6-footers. All right. Okay.
That one is out there now. Everyone just wants 6-footers, mate.
So across a certain position, you need 6-footers, all right? Certain positions, but not across all over the pitch, because otherwise some of the players in the Premier League would have never made it, right? So you need profiles, but physical profiles. So this does not mean just 6-footers. They mean that. So we got 6. I'll name a couple. So we got physical power. There's one. Right, so someone who can do that. We've got agile. We've got a twister and turner. So suddenly you can see some people fit them, right? So as long as they got a football ability and as long as they got a physical profile, they probably got a good chance of getting signed.
Right. So when you say that 6-footers, what positions would you classify those being in?
Well, our first team's in League Two, so that's centre half would be a non-negotiable. And then a striker probably, it depends the type of striker you want. But again, League Two, you're going to need someone who's quite tall. And that tends to be a goalkeeper around the stats around goalkeeping as well. So probably across those areas.
Right. So little Timmy sets off as a, well, you've said about the goalkeepers, but little Timmy sets off as a centre back, and all of a sudden the coaches say, "No, I see you as a centre forward or centre forward as a right back." Parents are not happy, players not happy. How do you cope with that? Like, I am what I am. You've had me in this position since I was 9, and now I'm 14. You want me to be a centre back? It's not happening. How do you cope with those kind of challenges?
Yeah. Open communication. As long as your bespoke pathway has been right, you probably shouldn't come across those situations. However, if you've got a very reactive pathway, those sort of things will happen. So they're quite delicate, obviously. They're highly emotive. You need to take emotion out of it and give them facts and give them a storyboard. So if you're telling me that person's under 14, I get them in a room and I lay out on a piece of paper what the next 2 years looks like. And if you can give clarity as to why you think that position's better suited to them, probably it's around their attributes as a player would be the number one thing. Then you can give clarity to that. Then that's all you can do. I'm pretty sure a parent, and I've had examples of it, would understand, right, that I can see now where he's going for 2 years. Okay, am I happy with it? Yeah, okay, I can go with that.
How many days in the week do the boys train, from the younger ones to the older ones, and play as well?
Yeah. So 3 training sessions a week would be foundation and youth development phase. Now in youth development phase, one of those sessions is day release. So coming off school for an afternoon. They all then have gyms supplemented around that. So the under nines will have something called FMS. So fundamental movement skills. So like evasion games, stuff like that, hopping, jumping, stuff like that. And then they have a game on a Sunday. So an 80-minute game. Then we'll supplement that with futsal tournaments and whatever come through the FL program, and then us adding some stuff. So like Cambridge run the Amber Cup, so we're in that. You got the FL Floodlit Cup, you got the PDL 17s Cup, stuff like that. And then 18s, they're in training 4 days a week, and then education on the Wednesday. And then they'll have match day on a Saturday. And then we're also in lots of cups, so like the Birmingham City Cup, Walsall County Cup, and then obviously all of their cups that they do alongside the EFL. So that's a commitment that every age group would have all the way through.
How do you find the Cat Free Games program?
Varied. So I mean that in the you don't know what you're going to come up against. As in, when you've been, what I mean by that is when you've been in the system, you understand each team and how they see development. You can you understand that bit. What I mean by varied is like, you can go to one team that are total possession based, and then you go versus one team that's very transitional based. So it's very varied. Whereas I don't know this, but I know from my counterparts that in category 1 and maybe some category 2 clubs, their games program can be very similar, as in they turn up and they're playing against the same style. So I have no issues with category 3. We are in the northern section. So we are the bottom of the northern section. So we have to travel all the way up, if anyone listening wants to know about that. And then we do play in, like I've said already, some of different cups and tournaments that allow us to go and play some of the southern teams as well. So we get some of that.
What's your take on somebody who's persistently late? Show up to
Why?
training, let's say in the younger age groups and the older age groups, they show up to training and sometimes they're late and they just walk into the session, no rush. What's your what's your take on that?
Find out why they're late. That's the simple part of it. Don't take it out on the player. You need to understand what's behind them. Like, until they can drive, they're governed by the stakeholder behind them. So you have to find out why. Then you need to see if it's something you need to give education in to that stakeholder. And then you bring them in one-to-one, find out a little bit more. Then if you see it happen again, once you've done that, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something deeper. So maybe you need to go and see them in a school. So we've done school visits where we'll go in and see what they're like in that setting. So you'll hear about stories where boys are really well behaved in academy, but they're disruptive at school, or vice versa. And you might see that because people have earned the role model badge. So they might see their teacher as that, but not their coach, or vice versa. So then obviously that comes with certain behaviours. So I think it's finding out, bring them in first, have a chat. If it's consistent and persistent afterward, go and find other ways. And then it gets to a point where if it's just down to that player, you really got to be open with them and just say, these are the expectations, link it back to our values. Do they fit our values? If they don't, this is how you need to go about it. And then just performance review from there.
So how do you treat that for a scholar?
And who can drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same, but there's more ownership because they're a young adult almost. So again, if a parent has to come in, we will, but 9 times out of 10, you don't need to because there's an expectation. But what if I put it back to them and all I say is you're paid by the football club as an employee, essentially. So you have an employment contract to turn up on time. And 9 times out of 10, that's fine. But I think it's set by your standards and your values. That normally governs behavior.
Okay. If you see let's say, disruptive parent, does that shape your decision on keeping them or their child around the environment?
Nope. A disrupted parent is normally because there hasn't been education from the club. So that's on the club. So go back, take accountability. You probably haven't set expectations when they started. So that's on you. Do that expectations piece, communicate it, whether it's a blanket to all the parents in that age group or just to the one, whatever that needs to be. And then once that happens, it's been set and you can hold them accountable to that then. Never ever take it out on the player. Unless you've done all the steps and then it becomes a player, like I said previously, you don't take it out on the player because you don't understand what's going on behind closed doors. Once you do know that, then at least you can give probably some awareness to that and then apply a strategy that might help.
So you say you do day release. What is the benefits of day release?
They get to get in our environment. We get to see them a little bit more because they'll come in, so we have a bi-weekly rota. They'll either get a double of education 1 week or the other week they'll get 1 hour education, 1 hour enrichment. So we can get like public speakers in through the LFE and then, which is supplied by EFL, by the way. And then it's just more contact. We can have a training session in a day, work on stuff, probably smaller group stuff, have a whole pitch as well, facility wise helps. And it's just seeing them as people. How do they hold themselves in social interactions? Whereas they come from a long day of school and that's when you ever see them. So they're never going to be at the top, are they? Because they've been through a whole day of learning. So it's just good to get them out and see them in that environment, if I'm honest.
So do you liaise with schools and find like arts for school reports? If so, why do that? You know, some people will say they're a talented boy. What are you looking for their school reports for?
Yeah. So it's so important is if they have a bad day at school, there's behavior issue at school and they can use day release as a punishment not to send them there. It's a luxury. Our head of education gets their reports as well, yeah. We have school visits. We open it up to the school if they want to, like their head of year or someone to come in and see what we do. Just there's some collaboration. We have to have school reports because we need to know what work they're bringing when they come into education. They could turn up and say, no, I haven't had anything. And then suddenly the report comes up with something around they're not doing their work when they go to day release. So there needs to be some sort of collaboration. So yeah, we get shared it all. And the head of education, Andy, does a really good job with that.
Why do you have a head of education? That's another thing. If it's all footballers, what do you need a head of education for?
So it's an audit requirement that footballers engage in their education while they're trying to become a professional footballer. I come from a biased view that I'm a lecturer, so I think they should have it regardless. Like we would do it. If it got taken out as audit, we would do it. And the reason I say that is because BTEC, what they do, the BTEC level 3 is equivalent to 3A levels, which I think is unbelievable. So that means that say the football dream doesn't happen, they can go to university still. So they're not at a disadvantage. And my argument is they come into our environment, have so many good life skills given to them that they're set up for success regardless where they go. So yeah, they have it as an audit requirement, but at the same time, I'd be a strong advocate for having it because it just sets them up to have opportunities.
What are you like when it comes to release and retain periods?
Open.
Emotionally.
Me personally,
Mm.
I'm a very emotionally driven person, but you wouldn't know that from my projection. Very honest. I believe in us being honest, not sugarcoating it, but do it in a really fair way. And ultimately, you have to understand that you're talking to someone who's exactly the same as you as a human. So how would you like to be spoken to? And once you start putting that perspective on it, I think then you probably do it in the right way. I think people who have had lessons of it being really reactive and emotional, well, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have liked it to be that way either. So I think there's definitely some accountability in that. But it's always a hard time, I'll be honest, because you invest relationships with these people, especially you've been coaching them. But at the same time, you have to understand where we are. It's a business as well as a football. So you have to keep evolving.
ADHD, do you have that at the club? Like multi-sensory players? And if so, how do you work with that?
Yeah. So we do. So our head of education would know all about, and he'll pass it on to the phase leads because they tend to be the ones who need the communication. That then gets passed down to the age group coach. This comes back to my bespoke pathway. So it's kind of a new thing that we're evolving is, for the example, those players need a really bespoke pathway because they're going to be able to react in certain ways and see things a little bit differently. So you have to tailor challenges and things like whether they go up an age group, down an age group, what position they play in and stuff like that. You have to be really proactive in that example because they might not understand why and they just need a better clarity in that. Whereas for other people, you might just say, no, that's what's happening, but they need to know the why. So I just go back to that it's just one-to-one communication. It's more touch points with them, just for them to have clarity and be comfortable in what's happening because of sensitivity to change.
Okay. So one thing to go back, you said about school reports, the head of education looks for school reports. What about somebody who's homeschooled?
Yeah, good. So we have a character reference from them, and
I'm very good.
yeah, so we get that. We'll get any reports from their parents if they're having any extra help, like a tutor at home as well. We'll get that reference as well. We do currently have one, so that's why I can say from experience.
All right. So a player is released from the club or the program. Do you have aftercare programs for those type of players?
For people we release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So our head of player care does a lot of that. So I can't show you again, but in our MDT, we talk about every single player once a month at least. So that's designated time. That also includes aftercare. So that's players who have left the program for whatever reason at whatever age. In that, it has signposted 4 touch points within a year they have to go through. So they know where they've had maybe direction to exit trials, a scholarship opportunity to go to USD, a player profile touch point so they can explore other avenues if they're a younger player and things like that. So yeah, our head of player care does a lot of that. And we just transitioned, had a new one in January. So our previous one did a lot of that as well. Yeah.
Good person versus good talent. Where are you with that?
Oh, a good person versus that's a good question. I'm a advocate that I have a bias towards good people, disciplined people, people who work hard, go above and beyond, have a growth mindset. That is my bias because I think you can get to a certain level if you work hard at your talent, only because I can only speak from my experience of what I went through. So although I'm 6'4", so I'm tall, so that helps in my position, especially in rugby. I worked really hard to get there, and my opportunity to go in professional sport only happened at 16 years old. So I was late. So I can speak from that experience. I definitely see players out there who are incredibly talented, but cut corners. So if we want to term someone as a good person or not, I'd say they cut corners. They can't. And
In
again,
what
that's
way?
why, say again.
Cutting corners in what way?
Nutrition, doing the extra analysis, the S&C and just boxing it off rather than really pushing themselves. And I think that you got to have I think anyone would say this, you'd love an organization with having a load of good people, wouldn't you? But at the same time, you need to have a bit of both. Like you need to have a certain degree of talent. And then I think it's making sure you do above and beyond for those who, like me, weren't the gifted of the gifted. and you had to work really hard, versus those who are gifted, you do realise everyone else is trying to catch you. So you need to make sure you stay ahead of the game as well. So I think it's relatable to both.
What does resilience mean to you?
That's a good one. Resilience means this to me. Everyone's resilient, in my opinion. And if you think of it as an analogy of the brain, so we have a very resilient brain. However, sometimes leaves fall from a tree and they cover your brain, like so. And you need to try and get those leaves to blow off again. And the only time when you're not feeling resilient is because you've got a lot of leaves on you. So you just need to find strategies to knock them off and then get back. So that's what resilience means to me.
Good point. What do you think about data in football?
I believe in data in football. It goes back to my point around football being a game surrounded by opinions. Is data informs decisions, but it doesn't sit on its own. It has to be collaborated with opinions, but you can't have one or the other on its own, in my opinion. And I've definitely been in organizations where it's opinion based. So we have a big emphasis on physical testing and data, and that informs where players are at in their development plan. For example, what they need to work individually on their S&C, for example. And then on the other side, we do that, and then we get the coaches' opinions to come next to them. And that's where they come and collaborate. So I'm a big advocate in terms of data.
What is being elite? If you see somebody, you say that is an elite player, what is that?
Consistently performs at a highest level over time. Yes, definitely makes mistakes, but is often the person who will churn out performances at that same level, 8 out of 10s and above forever. Whereas those who fluctuate and come up and down, that's because of their consistency off the field has probably made that happen, where they're not getting a recovery, which has affected one performance because of that. They've been affected by X, Y, and Z because of that. Consistency is staying at a level and continuing to do it.
So you see a lot of the boys when they get to maybe under 14s, you got these teenagers now, and you got drinks, drugs, girls, all of that's coming along. Have you seen really talented boys go off the rails because of distractions? And what distractions have you seen is common that distracts a lot of these boys from actually, they started off so focused on football and then they went off course?
Yeah, so gladly, I haven't had that experience at Walsall yet, so I can't say that one. I definitely think for Walsall, it's the environment that's created that and the standards that has allowed them to keep them on course. But in rugby, from my experience in that, especially at under 18s, you definitely have bits where, especially I think relationships is the biggest one. I can't speak from experience of drugs, alcohol and all of that because I didn't see it. But from relationships, it gets your eye off the ball at times if you don't navigate it properly. But I think the thing that I've learned through my own relationships is as long as you have clear clarity and communication with that person, whether it's has to be a difficult conversation or not, and you're on the same wavelength, then you tend not to have an issue. And although you might have an issue in that moment, you can normally digress it. But that's the only experience I've ever had.
So we mentioned about the first team. Do you sit down with the first team manager and discuss who's coming through and what are they looking for? Kind of what is the ideal, if I'm a scholar right now and I'm trying to get a pro contract, what attributes would I need to be a pro at Walsall?
You have to fit Walsall's profile first and foremost. The first team manager will tell you that, rightly so. You have to fit his system, the profile player they want, the attributes that each position has. I think that's why. So our football abilities are aligned to the first team. So they each have an image of a first team player, so the boys know. But I think that's as well so the first team can know what we're trying to develop. Because I think that clarity is really important, that alignment. I think just good people, hardworking, studious, come in the environment, keeps their head down, works hard. And I think the players are a governance of that, and they probably feed it back to the first team gaffer. And they'll say, look, he's come in, good lad, held himself well, worked really hard. Like, everyone can read that. So I don't think it's a thing that's different for being at Walsall. But yeah, we'll speak about players quite often. They'll come and watch our games as and when they can. And when I get up there, the first thing is, how's he doing? How's they doing? Other than asking how I am. So they're the things that I think are important, that you have that open dialogue. And we have a board that we sit on that have all of these people, and I speak to them every single week, if not see them in person. So I think that's really good, to have that common open collaboration.
So you're an under 16 trying to get a scholarship. What do you look for in your scholars?
A storyboard that they've excelled, they've been consistent, they progressed. Doesn't matter if they weren't performing in 15s, but over the next 6 months up to that decision, they've done really well and being consistent with that. That's fine as well, because of growth maturation or external factors have affected that. That's fine. I think it's, again, they fit a football ability, and it's the right thing for them as well. Are they going to excel in full-time football? Because currently they're not in full-time football. Remember, they're at school, whereas they get education with us. Are they a good person, like you've already asked me? And do they fit into our environment? So do they smell of Walsall, our aftershave? And how do they look as they're walking around the building? Would you want them to be representing us? And if they are ticking a lot of those boxes, 9 times out of 10, they tend to get a scholarship.
What is it? Because now we go to you. You've come from the coaching environment, or you've done a lot of the pitch stuff into this role. What has this role taught you that you didn't see coming before you jumped into it?
It's taught me that you can only plan so much, I think would be the honesty. I'm a very big planner. I like structure. So although the things I do plan are still there, I think that you need to be open-minded to what happens every day. Things do change quite quickly, which in my previous role didn't tend to happen because of the structure of the sessions, and I knew when I was working for coaches and so on. So I definitely say that it's taught me to just be open-minded a little bit more, not in the terms of innovation, that's already there, but in terms of be flexible, what's going to happen that day. And like I said at the start, you off air, is I like the variation. I don't mind it. It's just the timepiece is the only thing. Is I like to plan, but at the same time, you come and you got 5 and you end up with 20 things. And I think that's the bit, is the lesson in that.
So I'm a fly on the wall. If you do have a typical day, what's a week look like for you? If you could kind of talk me through something.
Yeah. So Mondays are normally a meeting of some sort. So the first Monday and the last Monday of the month is an AMT, academy management meeting, or a multidisciplinary meeting. You got recruitment meetings as well on Mondays. You got engagement with the community program meetings as well. Then you got bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks we do a organisation meeting. So who's where, what we doing, who's covering, etc. And then as you go through the week, you got training every night. I try and get out to training every night because it's based here. There's no excuse not to. Then if there's a midweek game, I try and go to that. So that could be on a Tuesday. And there could be a senior cup game, so that's travelling on a Tuesday or Wednesday somewhere. As you go through the week, you've got Wednesday, so that's our education day. So a lot of the coaching staff are off that day, but I'm in. So that's some of my deep work. So that does some of the work I do with the MDT lot, so education, secretary, or I do some of the projects I got going on. Meeting with the CEO every week. And then as you get towards the end of the week, it's that prep conversations around who's playing in what squads, who's injured, getting the injury board update, speaking to the first team manager, who's going training there, for example. And then on match day, just logistics. And I go and watch as many games as I physically can on the weekend.
Do you watch the video analysis of like the other games as well?
Yeah. So on any game I can't, I'll watch the VO back or the huddle. And then on Sundays, I rarely miss Sundays. So I'll see all 3 or 4 age groups that day anyway. So I prefer to be in person because I like to feel it. I like to sense what's going on, and because I don't think a video can always paint that. So yeah, I will catch up.
What is your idea of a model pro?
A model pro is it's extremely hard to become a pro. So a model pro is someone who knows what they're really good at, knows what they want to work on, and they actually work on it. So they have an ability to learn. They have an ability to go above and beyond what's required, because ultimately we all do that. You're doing that, hosting this today. And that's, I think, something that very few people want to do, because it's normally without people giving you feedback and giving you the gratification that you probably want. But you need to have that inner drive. You need to be motivated to be beyond that. And there's definitely a reason. You've got a reason for doing this, and I've definitely got a reason for jumping on, right? So I think the players have that as well. And I think that's what a model pro is. So suddenly, we haven't spoke about football, by the way, in that. All right. So I think once you start doing that and taking the elephant out the room, then I think people can start finding that it's actually quite tangible, but who's willing to go and do it?
Being a coach as well, coaching on the ball, coaching off the ball.
Coaching off the ball.
Why?
I was hoping there's a quick fire question. No. Coaching off the ball, because it paints 1,000 words. It tells you what's going on. Also, if you're on the ball and I tell you what to do, you know you've just got rid of all his thoughts. But you tell me you want creative players and players who can play with autonomy. But if you're telling him what to do, he's not doing any of those. So why are you coaching on the ball? So coach off the ball is the hardest thing to do, that a lot of coaches can't do, because they get sucked to the ball. But at the same time, they can't read what's going on. And that's what makes the best coaches, in my opinion, those who can see what's going on. So look, once the ball's up that end, something really easy and tangible for coaches listening is just look at the other end of the pitch. Is your goalkeeper positioning right? Is your back three, back four? Are you happy? What about the spacing? All right, are they talking? Okay, they're the easy things. And then suddenly you think about when they're on the ball and we're in a defensive shape, give some feedback. Once we're in that out possession, right, next time, or when a break of play happens, next time, just look forward, get your head up, make that forward pass into our space, something like that. And I think that's what my bias would be.
Final 4 questions.
Yeah.
For you. What qualities do you need to be a good academy player, academy coach, academy scout, and academy manager?
Players' willingness to learn is the biggest one. Quality would be consistency, willingness to do the stuff you don't get praised for every single day, and just going above and beyond, doing the nutrition, doing the analysis on your own, doing the S&C, finding ways that's going to get you 1% better. So I think that would be players. Coach, again, willingness to learn, because so my greatest achievement as head of coaching was we developed a culture of feedback. So they expected feedback. So rightly or wrongly, some head of coachings will disagree with us who listen, is we had an observation happen here every 1.2 days, which sounds sad for me to know that stat, but that probably tells you what I'm like. So that meant there was a culture that you had feedback. And by the way, it doesn't always have to be formal and sat down. Okay. So it is across various things. So willingness to learn for coaches and true player-centered development. And what I mean by that is find out what motivates him, who his stakeholder is, what's he like at school, what's trust mean to him, what's the hardest moment he's been through in his life, and what brought the most happiness. Ask him questions like that. Once you start doing that, suddenly you start to help a player, and you don't become a role model. The player will tell you when they become your role model, because you earn it. You don't just suddenly get it, you earn it. A scout, someone who has clarity on what the club's model is, doesn't use their bias in that. Of course, they're going to give their opinion. That's the whole idea of having a scout, right? But they fit it within your framework, and they understand what comes out at the other end. And as long as they have those two things, then you're probably not going to go too far wrong. And then academy manager, I think I said it at the start. I don't know if I said it off air, but the two things are have patience and multitasking. I think if you can have those two qualities, to have patience and not everyone sees success like you, and understand how they seek success, and then motivate them and use the KPIs to do that with them, versus multitasking, have an ability to know what's going on that day, but have an awareness of what's coming up and what information you might need that you've learned for that situation. And then just trust who you are. Trust who you are and the reason why you got this role. And as long as you stick to that person and you don't let the environment change you, then I think you're on a pretty good road to success.
You said something quickly earlier, which I want to touch on. You said you like routines. What's important about routines?
What's important about routine is I know what's going on. I'm someone who loves control in the sense of what I can control, by the way. What I mean by that, not people. So I like to know what's going on. And the reason is because I'm a very methodical thinker. So I have to, especially in the role now, I have to know when I'm doing my deep work now. So my deep work when no one's bothering me and I'm going to do a project, that's very few and far between now. So I have to be routine and know when I'm going to get 2 hours. So to give you an insight, on a Friday, I come in at 6:30 in the morning. No one else comes in till about 8. I get an hour and a half and I know that's my deep work. I don't do any admin in that, don't send any emails. And I think that's having the routine.
Okay. Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you would like to say?
No, I think you've asked a fair few questions, which was good. I think we went round it, tried to be as honest as possible and give like a sense of what we're like. So genuinely, Marvy, thank you. I really do appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you doing this. You didn't have to do it for me. Thank you very much, or for the people listening. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, my pleasure.
Thank you very much. So to all you guys, thank you for joining me on this episode. And I hope I catch you on the next episode. Take care. This episode is sponsored by the PV Consultant, the go-to business strategist for salon owners and solo beauty professionals who want to grow smarter, not harder. If you're ready to boost your visibility and start attracting more clients today, download the PV Consultant's free Google cheat sheet at www.thepvconsultant.net/cheat sheet. It's packed with simple, powerful tips to get your business seen by the right people. A big thank you to the PV Consultant for supporting today's episode and helping more businesses shine.